morning.
Good
How
morning.
are you? Thanks for joining us on the Monday morning show. And most of you sitting through the city with an inch and a quarter of rain.
Inch and a quarter?
Inch and a quarter. That was the rainfall total for the park. Walk over to the wall. We'll show you what it looks like. This shot showing you lower Manhattan. And everything is actually in pretty good shape now as we work into clear. But for us, bright sunny skies, 65 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning, and sunny and pleasant for the rest of the day, 80 degrees. It's kind of a guilty pleasure as beautiful as this weather's going to be. The 5-day, yeah, look at this, 78 degrees on Wednesday. Thursday, I think I'm even overdone with the clouds there. I think it turns out to be a little bit nicer. Friday, very nice. Saturday, beautiful, cool, pleasant days.
Did we get on that? I had one.
BuzzFeed dug up an old quote from Donald Trump talking about a large-scale terror attack 19 months before 9/11. In his 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, "I really am convinced we're in danger of the sort of terrorist attacks that will make the bombing of the 1993 Trade Center look like little kids playing with firecrackers." Trump also mentioned the mastermind of the attack, writing, quote, "One day, we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, it's on to a new enemy and a new crisis."
We are having some technical difficulties, which is totally understandable when you try to do, ad hoc reporting and getting information to you as fast as we possibly can and making sure that it's accurate at the same time. So
Donald Trump is on the line. I mean, we know him as the man behind lots of real estate in Manhattan, and of course, Donald, I understand you were actually a witness to what happened this morning.
Well, I have a window that looks directly at the World Trade Center, and I saw this huge explosion. I was with a group of people, and I really couldn't even believe it. And even, I think, worse than that, for years I've looked right directly at the building. I'd see the Empire State Building in the foreground and the World Trade Center in the background, and now I'm looking at absolutely nothing. It's just gone, and it's just hard to believe.
Donald, Alan Marcus here. Your building is, the Trump Tower, is one of the great tourist attractions in the world. It's well known universally. Are you taking any precautions there in light of what happened at the World Trade Center?
Well, Alan, we've always had, as you know, very, very strong security, but there's very little you can do about planes crashing into a building. I mean, you look at Larry Silverstein, who's a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him, because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So when I just spoke to him, there's nothing you can do when people are going to be bombing planes at your building. Now, Donald, I guess maybe the world is going to be changing, and maybe you're going to have F-16s flying all over the city, etc. But it's a pretty tough situation.
Donald, you have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or did you know what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest. And I just spoke to my people, and they said it's the most unbelievable sight. It's probably 7 or 8 blocks away from the World Trade Center, and yet Wall Street is littered with 2 feet of stone and brick and mortar and steel, and there are thousands of people walking over the debris over the Brooklyn Bridge, where they're sending them out over the Brooklyn Bridge to Brooklyn, and then I guess they're going to have to figure out how to get home from there. But they have between 1 foot and 2 feet of debris right in front of a building that's probably, you would say, Alan, 6 or 7 blocks away.
Donald, this is Roland Smith.
Hi, Roland.
How you doing on this kind of day? At some point, we're going to put all this behind us, and you as a visionary, particularly in New York real estate, What do you think that we ought to do as a city, as a people, when all of this when the mourning stops, when the dead are honored, and we've found out what caused it and maybe corrected it? What does the city need to do?
Well, I guess the big thing that you really will have to do is never forget. You just can't forget that something like this happened. I was so disappointed when they closed the stock exchange, but of course, at some point, you had no choice, when they initially announced it was closing, because you want to just say, the hell with it, you're going forward, nothing's going to change. But the fact is, something has changed very dramatically. And I think one of the very sad things is going to be when you look at the skyline of New York, which has become so emblazoned in your own memory, and you look at the skyline of New York and you see these buildings, these two buildings, whether you love them or don't love them, they were a great part of the skyline. And then when you look at the skyline after 2001, and you're going to see a skyline without these two buildings, you're going to say, what happened? People won't believe it. When you show your children or your grandchildren in years to come what New York looked like in the year 2000, and then what New York looked like just a year later, they're going to say, what happened?
Hey, Donald,
it's hard to believe.
In the year 2000, Donald, you considered running for president. If you had done that and if you had been successful, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
Well, I'd be taking a very, very tough line, Alan. I mean, most people feel they know at least approximately the group of people that did this and where they are. But, boy, would you have to take a hard line on this. This just can't be tolerated, and it's got to be very, very stern. This is, as you and I were discussing before, Alan, this was probably worse than Pearl Harbor. Many more people are dead, and they don't know. They have no idea, but I have somebody that was down there who witnessed at least 10 people jumping out of the building from 70 and 80 stories up in the air. I mean, you probably have 25 or 30,000 is the number I've heard, but I would think would be much more than that. I think the most of the damage will be caused not by even in the building in terms of the people dead, but by the people on the streets from falling debris.
Donald, you're probably the best-known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. The World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation, and it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid, and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel. I think, obviously, they were very big planes. They were going very rapidly, because I was also watching where the plane seemed to be not only going fast, it seemed to be coming down into the building. So it was getting the speed from going downhill, so to speak. It just seemed to me that to do that kind of destruction is even more than a big plane, because you're talking about taking out steel, the heaviest caliber steel that was used on a building. I mean, these buildings were rock solid, and it's just an amazing thing. This country is different today, and it's going to be different than it ever was for many years to come.
Very profound statement and very true.
Donald, one last question for you. Given the magnitude of how much of American commerce took place within the Twin Towers, what do you, as you're an expert on this, what do you think is going to be the fallout over the next several weeks, months, and even years, given what we have lost in terms of those buildings going down and all that was within it?
Well, I, as an example, Alan, and you might use them too, but I have an insurance company that was on the 102nd floor of the World Trade Center. They're gone. I don't know who's gone. I don't know anything other than their offices are no longer there. They're wiped out. The Morgan Stanley group, you know, Morgan Stanley, a big, powerful firm, they had 50 stories in the building. Gone. I mean, you're talking about some firms that are just gone. Now, Morgan Stanley, in that case, had a lot of its offices in Midtown, and they had about half downtown. Morgan Stanley's a big, powerful firm. They're gone. Many firms had all of their offices, as you know, in the World Trade Center. It was 8 million square feet. 8 million square feet is the size of some cities. And we had 8 million square feet in the world, 4 million in each building. They were huge buildings, not only in height, but, you know, each floor was 50,000 feet. They were monstrous floors. Each floor was almost a city in itself, and they had 110 floors or so. So, you know, many firms that were easily recognizable for those of us in the financial worlds, for those of us that read the papers and see the financial pages, they're going to be gone. I mean, they're just not going to exist anymore. They're gone.
Donald Trump.
Many of the people are gone with them.
Donald Trump, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you
We
all.
really
Good luck.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And you
Same
too.
to you.
You too.
Our prayers are with everyone.
Ja, guten Abend nach Berlin. Wir stehen hier ungefähr 4 Blocks vom World Trade Center entfernt, oder das, was davon übrig geblieben ist. Und neben mir steht Donald Trump. Donald Trump hat selber einige Gebäude in der Gegend. Ich werde ihn kurz dazu befragen. Mr. Trump, do you have any interest in the area down there that has been affected?
I have a lot of property down there, but it was unfortunately affected by what happened to the World Trade Center.
Ich habe eine Menge Gebäude dort unten, aber Gott sei Dank ist es von diesem Terroranschlag nicht in Mitleidenschaft gezogen worden. What's your biggest fear, Mr. Trump?
Well, I just went to what they call ground zero. I've never seen anything like it. The devastation, the human life that's been just wasted for no reason whatsoever. It is a terrible scene. It's a terrible sight. But New Yorkers are very strong and resilient, and they'll rebuild quickly.
Ich habe noch nie so eine Verwüstung gesehen, ich habe noch nie so eine Verwüstung menschlichen Lebens gesehen, eine Verschwendung menschlichen Lebens, aber New York wird damit fertig werden mit so einem Terroranschlag. Mr. Trump, what should be the response to this attack? How should the US respond to such a devastating?
Well, I think they have to respond quickly and effectively. They have to find out exactly what the cause was, who did it, and they have to go after these people because there is no other choice. And then secondarily, and much less importantly, we have to rebuild in some form that will be just as majestic as the World Trade Center.
Also die USA müssen auf diese Verwüstung, auf diesen Terroranschlag so deutlich wie möglich und so schnell wie möglich antworten. Und vor allen Dingen sagt er, wir werden wieder ein Gebäude bauen, was noch majestätischer ist als das World Trade Center. Will you be involved? Will you take any efforts, any steps to reconstruct the area?
Well, I have a lot of men down here right now. We have over 100, and we have about 125 coming. So we'll have a couple of hundred people down here. And they're very brave, and what they're doing is amazing. And we will be involved in some form in helping to reconstruct.
Ich habe ihn gefragt, wird er mithelfen, diese Gegend wieder aufzubauen? Der sagt, er hat einige 100 Leute bereits dort und es ist erstaunlich, was sie bereits geleistet haben. What kind of cost would you estimate to rebuild this area? How much money has been lost in the attack?
I would say $15 to $20 billion. You're talking billions and billions of dollars, and it's irreparable. But I really feel that the location is such and the importance of the monument is such that we have to rebuild. And again, not necessarily in the form of the two towers, but something has to be done that's very big and very majestic.
Er sagt, ich habe ihn gefragt, wie viel wird es kosten, diese Gegend wieder aufzubauen. Er sagt, es wird Milliarden kosten, zweistellige Milliardenbeträge. Aber wir sollten es nicht so aufbauen wie das World Trade Center mit diesen beiden Türmen, sondern eine andere Form finden, etwas gleichsam Majestätisches. A lot of people ask, how is it possible that a Boeing plane would be able to destroy or two planes would be able to destroy the Twin Towers? Because they were constructed to withstand like a 707 attack.
Well, it's tremendous power and tremendous heat, and people were willing to die, and when they're willing to die and when they're willing to become kamikazes of a sense, there's very little you can do about it. I mean, the heat and the power, actually it was amazing that the initial jolts didn't jar the building as much as people would have thought. But the tremendous amounts of fuel that was dumped on the building and 1,600 degrees temperature, I guess that's probably more than anything could take, no matter what.
Ich habe ihn gefragt, wie kann es denn passieren, dass diese Gebäude von einem Flugzeug zerstört werden? Die Twin Towers waren gebaut worden, um auch dem Ansturm einer Boeing zu widerstehen. Er sagt, es ist die unglaubliche Hitze, die sich entwickelt hat, die Aufschlagkraft, das Benzin, was diese Gebäude zu Fall gebracht hat. Man kann gegen solche Dinge nichts tun. When do you think we will be start to rebuild?
Well, I would hope it would really be very quickly. A lot of great genius people in the city, and I think that within a shorter period of time than first we have to get rid of what's there, and we have to save as many lives as possible, if that is possible. Today they found 5 people under the rubble, which is amazing, alive. But after that process takes place, I think they can start thinking about rebuilding, absolutely.
Ich habe ihn gefragt, wann werden die Wiederaufbauarbeiten beginnen. Er sagt, wir müssen erst natürlich das Leben retten und diese ganzen Aufräumarbeiten vonstatten bringen und dann gleich beginnen, wieder aufzubauen. Vielen Dank, Mr. Trump.
Danke.
Thanks a lot.
Danke.
Ja, danke.
Now, just a few moments ago, Donald Trump passed through here, so we had a minute to talk with him. Let's roll that tape. You can see what he had to say.
Well, I've never seen anything like it. I've seen 2 huge 110-story buildings that are reduced to rubble. Thousands and thousands of lives. I just got to see something that I've never seen before. I have hundreds of men inside working right now, and we're bringing down another 125 in a little while, and they've never done work like this before. And they're hard-working people, but they've never seen anything like it, and they've never done work like this before. It's terrible.
Tell me what it's like at Ground Zero. Tell me about the workers that you saw and what they're doing there.
Well, not only is it devastation, but it's very dangerous because every few minutes a whistle would go off and everybody would just run because you have all the buildings around it, which are in such a weakened state that people just don't know. And so they just have to take off. And then they come back and they're working under 50-story buildings that you don't know if they're going to fall down. So it's a terrible thing for the workers, and it's a terrible thing for the world, really.
How have you spoken to any of your men? Do you know how they're reacting to this? Because emotionally, this must be so incredibly difficult.
Well, there are a lot of them, but they've never seen bodies like this. I mean, the bodies all over. The great thing is when they find somebody that's alive, like the 5 firemen that they just found a little while ago. So that's the great thing, and that's what they're all striving for. But generally speaking, that's not the case. So they are working very, very hard, but it's a very depressing situation for these folks.
As you walked around and as you saw the piles of rubble, there are thousands of families out there who are hoping that someone might be in a pocket somewhere, still alive, still breathing, waiting to be dug up. As you assessed that damage from your perspective, do you believe that's possible?
Well, I would certainly not want to be the one to say it's not possible. Certainly it's a tough situation, but you can't give up hope because there's always hope. I mean, the 5 men, I'm sure their families thought that they probably were gone, and now they walk in the door. A couple of them walked away after they were dug out. So there probably are some more people in there, and therefore you can't give up hope.
You've had an impact on the skyline of New York. What is it like as you see it now?
It's like a whole different skyline. It's like a whole different city and world. I cannot believe the sight of Lower Manhattan without the World Trade Center, and therefore we have to rebuild, not necessarily in that form, but we have to rebuild at least as good and maybe better.
Just finally, can you tell me emotionally as you walked around, we've heard some of the stories from the firemen. They're so exhausted and mentally and physically. What was it like for you personally to go in and see all of what you saw?
Well, it was amazing to see it. It was a very depressing scene, but I'll tell you what, you really can take heart. These firemen and policemen and the construction workers equally, the courage they have is unbelievable. I mean, they're working, digging out and lifting up steel, and above them you have 55-story buildings that are very possibly going to be pouring down on them any minute, and they're working like nothing's wrong. I mean, they're amazing.
It shouldn't be commercial development. It really should just be a park. Just grass, trees, place for meditation. He really isn't interested in that kind of thing, I don't think.
Good morning. Welcome to Trump Tower. It's an honor to have all of you with us. If we rebuild the World Trade Center in the form of a skeleton, Freedom Tower, the terrorists win. We want to rebuild the World Trade Center as the World Trade Center, but better. A little bit taller, a lot stronger, just plain better.
That's it?
Governor, what floor are the officers going to be on?
We'll decide.
I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down. Thousands of people were cheering. So something's going on. We got to find out what it is. I do want surveillance. I will absolutely take database on the people coming in from Syria if we can't stop it, but we're going to. And if I win, I've made it known, if I win, they're going back. We can't have them. They're going back. We can't have them. We can't have them.
Donald Trump is doubling down on claims he made over the weekend that he saw thousands of Muslim Americans in New Jersey celebrating after the September 11th terror attacks. Trump first made the remarks at a rally Saturday and then stood by them Monday night at an event in Columbus, Ohio.
During a speech recently, I said that I saw in parts of New Jersey, Jersey City, but parts of New Jersey, I saw people getting together and in fairly large numbers celebrating as the World Trade Center was coming down, killing thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people. People are still dying over what happened to the World Trade Center, and they're dying a terrible death. And I saw people, and I saw them on television, and I read about it on the internet, and I read about it. So they said, oh, we can't find anything, Mr. Trump. The reporters are calling all day, all night. They want to find out, did Trump make a mistake? So I have some good people. And they checked and they checked. And believe me, it's being cleared off, plenty of stuff. They don't like that, because that's not good for the liberal cause, right? But they don't like it. And lo and behold, I start getting phone calls in my office by the hundreds that they were there and they saw this take place. People. So one of my people comes in. This is a story from the Washington Post on September 18th, a week later, 2001. In Jersey City, within hours of two jetliners plowing into the World Trade Center, law enforcement authorities detained and questioned a number of people who were allegedly seen celebrating the attacks and holding tailgate style. Tailgate, you know what that means? Tailgate. That means football games, Ohio State, thousands of people in parking lots, on roofs. Tailgate is a lot of people. Tailgate's not 2 people. And holding tailgate-style parties on rooftops while they watched the devastation on the other side of the river. Okay? Washington Post. Washington Post. So they've come in, and we've received hundreds of phone calls in my office because it's become sort of a big subject. And they want to try and deny it, but you can't deny it. Many people in this room heard about it, probably saw it. And, you know, the sad part is we're all sort of on the same side. Whether you're liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican, we're sort of on the same. We want our country to be great again. That's what the whole thing is, right? It really doesn't make sense. But fortunately, somebody in the Washington Post wrote that, and they'll try and deny it. They'll probably say, well, we made a mistake, which I almost like that better. Then I could show you how dishonest they all are. I might like that better. Let them say that. But they'll find some reason to deny it. They'll call it a typo. It was about it was a very long and winding typo. But they'll try and deny it. But I don't think they'll be able to. Not with the smart people, they're not going to be able to.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Continuing now with Donald Trump. As you may know, he said that he saw thousands of Muslims in New Jersey celebrating after the 9/11 attack. We investigated and came up with a very interesting report from WCBS TV 5 days after 9/11.
Is another apartment building, one that investigators told me, quote, is swarming with suspects. Suspects who I'm told were cheering on the roof when they saw the plane slam into the Trade Center. Now, police were called to the building by other neighbors and found 8 men celebrating, 6 of them tenants in the building. The FBI and other terrorist task force agencies then arrived, and the older investigators on the task force recalled that they had been to this building before, 8 years ago, when the first World Trade Center attack led them to Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, whose Jersey City mosque lies between the 2 buildings, getting attention today.
Now, I played that report for Mr. Trump yesterday while telling him we could find no other videotape germane to the issue. So no videotape about, you know, thousands of people celebrating doesn't exist, and we really looked everywhere. I mean, it's just not there. But there were people celebrating. Mayor Giuliani confirms in New York it happened. Mr. Guzman confirms in Jersey it happened. So does the Jersey State Police. So you were wrong by saying thousands, but it did happen. What say you?
Well, I don't know that I'm wrong, Bill. You know, this just came out from Breitbart. I mean, literally, it just came out. Trump vindicated, 100% vindicated. And this just, I mean, literally, I'm just seeing it now. So I don't know that I'm wrong. There are a lot of people. You know, we don't have cell phones today with the cameras on them. I mean, if we did, I think you'd see something a lot different. You look at what happened recently, a week ago, with the soccer game, where they had a minute of silence for the people that were just absolutely... It was horrible what happened in Paris, and they had honoring those people, a minute of silence, and you heard shouts from the Muslim world at the game that were horrendous. The players were embarrassed, the coaches were embarrassed.
Do you remember what country that was?
Excuse me?
Do you remember what country that was?
It was a different country.
It was Turkey.
That was a different country. But I'm just saying,
okay.
It was Turkey. I'm just saying, there's great hatred out there.
No,
there's tremendous hatred out there.
Nobody's disputing that.
And people aren't acknowledging it.
Where you get into trouble, with all due respect, of course, is what you give a speech and you say things like, I saw thousands, and there weren't thousands. Now,
but you don't know that there weren't, Bill. Bill, you don't know what there were.
I was here, I was reporting, and believe me, if there were thousands, that would have been reported. But what I'm trying to get at is
they were swarming. Bill, this article says they were swarming all over the place.
Right.
So I don't know what that means, but it means a lot of people.
There were some people, not thousands. Now, but what I want to get at is this. You're giving a speech tonight in Virginia.
Bill, you don't know that.
I'm pretty confident.
All right, you're pretty sure.
Right?
You're pretty sure. You don't know that,
and
Bill.
You know that
this
I'm always right.
Swarming all over New Jersey.
I'm always right. So, you know, take it to the bank.
Okay.
All right. So you go into Virginia, and you give a speech tonight, okay? Do you have that speech printed out, or is it an ad-lib speech?
Well, it would be so much easier to just read off a teleprompter like our president does, where he reads a teleprompter because he can't do anything else. I like to not do that. I have thousands of people. The other night we had 15,000 people. We had 12,000 people.
Right. It's
I like to do extemporaneous.
right?
You know why?
Right.
It's more exciting.
And it's more,
and you know the other thing about it?
But you get into
Bill, the other thing about I can talk about current events. I can talk about things that took place 2 hours ago. I can talk about a soccer game if it was played and people were screaming horrible things and it took place an hour before I go up. And frankly, it's much more exciting to speak for the people, for everybody, even for me. But
I understand
now,
that.
To do that, you need an extraordinary memory and you need lots of ability to be able to speak in front of 20,000 people without a speech.
And
but
you have that.
I think it's much better.
But here's what happens. Sometimes when you're up there, you get overly excited, and you're speaking extemporaneously, and then you say things as anybody would, because the crowd is cheering and everything's going wild, that you don't know to be true, but you believe to be true, but you don't know it. So that's the risk as a president, all right? When you're out there as a man who wants the most powerful position in the world, you got to kind of be careful in those speeches, because that's what gets you in trouble. Do you get my point?
I would love to read speeches off of a teleprompter. It is so easy to do. I would even love to read speeches, period. But you know what? You don't get the same excitement. You don't get the same feeling. And I haven't made very many mistakes, that I can tell you. You know, when I announced and when I talked about illegal immigration, all of a sudden everyone, I mean, the world went crazy and thought it was terrible. 4 weeks later, I was #1 in the polls because everyone realized I was right. In fact, it was about 1 week later. But I was #1 in the polls, and now I'm #1 in every single poll. A big one, you'll hate to hear this, but a big one's coming out, CNN tomorrow. I don't know how it's going to be, but I look forward to that one. But we're #1 in every poll, including the Fox poll, very important.
But I'm just saying that
And we beat Hillary, by the way, Bill, and we beat Hillary head-to-head.
And I'm sure she's thrilled for that. With responsibility,
she's thrilled.
Okay, with the responsibility that you're seeking comes personal responsibility. And when you say something, you got to be pretty damn well sure that it's accurate and it's not hyperbole. That's the point I'm trying to make, and I'm sure you understand. But
I've had very few complaints, Bill. I've had very few complaints, and we get the biggest crowds by many, many times, and we get far bigger crowds than anybody else.
That's because you're so charismatic.
We have a great, you know what? We have a great time with a tough subject, because there's not a lot of good news happening with the United States. You understand that better than anybody. So we have a great time, as good a time as you can have, with subject matter that's not so pleasant.
Always very fascinating to talk with you, Donald, and we always appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Next to the race for 2016 tonight, Donald Trump and what he said today about 9/11, about the World Trade Center, and former President George W. Bush. Those words drawing a quick response from Jeb Bush at this hour. ABC's Tom Yamas on the campaign trail.
Tonight, Donald Trump making a bold accusation against former President George W. Bush, implying Bush is to blame for 9/11.
When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want, the World Trade Center came down during his time. If you look
Hold
at
on,
Sandy Hook,
you can't blame George Bush for that.
He was president, okay? Don't blame him or don't blame him, but he was president. The World Trade Center came down during his reign.
The comments made during an interview with Bloomberg TV after Trump was asked if he had the compassion to handle crises like 9/11 or the Sandy Hook shooting.
Help us understand who Donald Trump is as a man. I need to know that you will make us feel safe and you will make us feel proud.
I think I have a bigger heart than all of them. I think I'm much more competent than all of them.
Trump has repeatedly called President Bush a disaster, but never going this far. Rival Jeb Bush tonight firing back on Twitter, tweeting, "How pathetic for Donald Trump to criticize the president for 9/11. We were attacked and my brother kept us safe." So Bush and Trump back at it. And David, last night we had reported how Trump and Dr. Ben Carson were threatening to boycott the next debate because they said it was going to be too long. Well, tonight, CNBC, the host of that debate, has agreed to Carson and Trump's terms. The debate will now be 2 hours. David?
All right, the debate moves on. Tom Yamas tonight. Tom, thank you.
Look, when somebody attacks me like Jeb at one of the debates, and I was very nice to him at the Ronald Reagan. I didn't say it. I didn't want to say it. But he talked about the tremendous safety. Well, excuse me, the World Trade Center came down during
the, reign of George Bush, right? I mean, it came down. So during the Ronald Reagan, if you remember the library debate, he mentioned about how we were safe. We weren't safe. That was the greatest attack in the history of the United States, worse than Pearl Harbor because it was individuals. We were attacked as individuals as opposed to the military. The greatest single attack. So when he's saying, and I'm standing up there, I'm saying, do I want to embarrass him by saying this? But because I'm a nice person, I didn't do it. But then when he used it another time, I had to say, I'm sorry, but we weren't safe. The World Trade Center came down, which was the greatest attack in history on this country. So you had that. You obviously had the war, which was a big mistake. I mean, I think few people would say the war in Iraq was a positive. You had him on the aircraft carrier saying all sorts of wonderful things, how the war was essentially over. Guess what? Not over. And, the war with Iraq is a disaster. Now Iran is taking over Iraq, as sure as you're sitting there. They're taking the oil. They're taking everything. I said take the oil. I was against the war in Iraq, by the way. I was the only one on the stage. Believe me, you should get some points for vision. But I was totally against the war in Iraq. I said it's going to destabilize the Middle East. And then when they went in, I said when they're getting out, take the oil. They didn't take the oil. So now Iran is going to have the oil, and ISIS has the oil. And ISIS, this has fueled ISIS, because ISIS now has so much money because they've had the oil.
On Monday, George W. Bush will campaign in South Carolina for his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should have been impeached?
First of all, I have to say, as a businessman, I get along with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many of the people in the audience. And by the way, I'm a self-funder. I have my wife and I have my son. That's all I have. I don't have this. So let me just tell you, I get along with everybody, which is my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush. When a member on the stage's brother gets attacked, the brother gets to respond.
Do I get to do it 5 or 6 times or just once
nice.
responding to that? So here's the deal. I'm sick and tired of Barack Obama blaming my brother for all of the problems that he's had. And frankly, I could care less about the insults that Donald Trump gives to me. It's blood sport for him. He enjoys it, and I'm glad he's happy about it. But I am sick and tired of him going after my family. My dad is the greatest man alive in my mind. And while Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did. And he's had the gall to go after my mother.
The World Trade Center came down
during your brother's reign.
Remember that.
Hold on.
Let me finish this. He's had the gall to go after my mother.
That's not keeping
Look, I
us
won
safe.
the lottery when I was born 63 years ago and looked up and I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be
is
running.
not about my family or his family.
Okay.
This is about the South Carolina families that need someone to be a commander-in-chief that can lead.
Governor,
I'm that person.
Governor Kasich, would you weigh in on?
The White House is coming to the First Lady's defense today over a wardrobe flap that many say is a total cheap shot. Conspiracy theorists on Twitter noticed something unusual about the stitching on a coat Melania once wore at a 9/11 memorial service. Is that a plane crashing into one of the Twin Towers in the back of Melania's coat? Goes this comment. It legit looks like an object is flying into a tower. The story was picked up by USA Today and Yahoo News. The First Lady wore the coat at a 9/11 ceremony in Shanksville, Pennsylvania last year. It's coming to light now because the White House posted the image yesterday with the caption, "We will never forget." Now her critics are calling her insensitive, saying it's the second time one of her jackets has raised eyebrows. Remember, I really don't care, do you? Professor Tammy Vigil wrote the new book, Melania and Michelle, First Ladies in a New Era. I asked her why Melania gets so much bad press. Do you think Melania is getting a fair shake?
A lot of the response to Melania Trump is sort of people's response to her husband. And that's not really fair for her.
She says Michelle Obama had her critics too. It comes with the job.
Every First Lady is usually given a really raw deal. So I think she's gotten the same raw deal.
Look closer at the stitching. That's not a plane, it's a button. No conspiracy here, folks. Now, White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham is calling the coat flap conspiracy ridiculous.
Thank you very much. How are you? It's a sad day. It's a very sad day for a lot of reasons. And we just added to that reason last week. Because that should have never been allowed to happen, I have to say. And I've watched all the speeches and nobody mentions it, what they did. But we're going to have to live with that for a period of time. Very disappointing, but incredible job you do. You do. I grew up with you. And you are New York's finest. You're incredible people. I know many of you, and I appreciated during the election, the New York City police endorsed Trump. You know that, right? First time they've ever endorsed a candidate. They told me, first time, maybe they do it every time, I don't know, but they told me, first time they've ever endorsed a candidate for president, and it's a great honor.
No one who lived through the horror of the September 11th terrorist attacks can ever forget the agony and the anguish of that terrible day. It was a terrible day. The images of dark plumes of smoke billowing over lower Manhattan, the Pentagon, and a field of Pennsylvania, such a beautiful field, are seared into our minds forever. We will never forget. Today, on this solemn anniversary of those monstrous attacks, we remember the 2,977 precious souls who were savagely taken from us on that morning 22 years ago, leaving a void that can never be filled, No matter what happens, it can never be filled. We will say a prayer for each of the beautiful families they left behind, whose pain is beyond comprehension. What they've gone through is not even believable. We honor the firefighters, the great New York PD, the police department, what great people they are. They are so great. And the Port Authority officers, the Virginia, D.C., and Pentagon police, and the military service members and other first responders, actually all over the country, they acted with supreme heroism, and they went to the site of the most heinous crime. They would leave other states far away and go to the World Trade Center site, the Pentagon. They'd go to Pennsylvania, who in many cases gave their lives in the line of duty. God bless the memory of all of those who perished in the 9/11 attacks. We will never, ever forget. We will never forget you. We love you. God bless their families, and God bless America. Thank you.